Welcome and thank you for joining us. Today's tutorial is all about streamlining your CorelDRAW workspace so that you'll be able to work faster and have more time to concentrate on being creative rather than searching for the right tools to work with. In today's session, we're going to be covering the following topics. Do you want to get a job done quickly? Then having the right tools in the right place is a good start. Let me give you an example. You need to fix something around the house and go to the garage to find a tool. Are you going to find a well-ordered, tidy selection of tools that will let you get the job done fast? Or will you be faced with something like this? I'm sure I had a hammer and a box of nails around here somewhere. So the first thing we'll be taking a look at is streamlining the CorelDRAW workspace. We will also be creating custom workspaces, custom toolbars, and key shortcuts to suit your every need. Moving on from customizing the workspace, we will then be taking a look at working with colour, one of the most important aspects of any design. Do you need to quickly create designs in different colours for different backgrounds? Or do you need the colours of your graphics to work well with imported images? Working with colour styles, colour harmonies, and creating custom colour palettes from images will let you create harmonious, eye-catching designs in seconds. So we're going to kick off our tutorial today by taking a look at CorelDRAW workspaces. Now, in a nutshell, a CorelDRAW workspace is a specific configuration of tools in the toolbox, commands, symbols on property bars, for example, which docking panels are open. And you can configure CorelDRAW to work exactly in the way that you would like to have it. Now, brand new in CorelDRAW7 is the new welcome screen, and the welcome screen allows you here to choose a pre-configured workspace if you wish to. So let's have a quick look at these. So the light workspace is ideal for new users who are getting started with CorelDRAW, and it's a very clean and very slimmed down set of tools, especially designed just for getting the simplest tasks done. And you can of course grow with your workspace. So as you're going along, you can add tools, you can add commands, and just tweak the workspace to suit your needs. So if you take a look at the toolbar here, you can see the default workspace, which is highlighted here, has a specific set of tools associated with it. If I click on or switch to the light workspace, you can see the number of tools has been reduced, and we now only have 2 dockers open. We also have a classic workspace, which is almost but not quite identical to the default workspace, but it resembles more a workspace that you might be used to working with if you're coming from an older version of CorelDRAW. So if you've been working with CorelDRAW X3, X4, X5, X6, this might be a workspace that you will prefer working with. The default workspace, which is the one which you are shown when you first start up the program, has been redesigned from the ground up to give you a more intuitive list of tools and controls, and it's more ideal for users who are quite familiar with working with CorelDRAW and are quite comfortable working with an extended set of tools. Now, we also have task-related workspaces. So under the Advanced Workspace, we have a workspace for illustration, which is going to give you all the tools that you need for creating illustrative work, for example, book covers, magazines, storyboards, and other illustrations. But if you're more into page layout, let's say you're doing brochures, flyers, multi-page documents, then the page layouting tools might be more useful for you. So we've got the arrangement tools, we've got the guidelines, and everything to do with page layout. And finally, if you are used to working with Adobe Illustrator, we've also got a workspace that basically replicates or mimics the look and feel of the Adobe Illustrator workspace. So these are the pre-configured workspaces, but what if you want to create your own customized workspace? So let's just open up a new document and take a look at this. Now, before we actually start customizing and streamlining our workspace, I'd like to mention something else quickly. Now, the topic of today's webinar is actually increasing your productivity by being able to work faster in CorelDRAW. Now, you may be working with dual monitors, and in this case, one of the first things you can do is to declutter the actual working area. Now, if you're working on a design, sometimes you need to zoom in. You've got docking panels here, property bars, toolboxes, and sometimes this can actually distract from the actual design itself. But by right-clicking in the property bar and disabling lock toolbars, each of the elements of our workspace, our docking panels, our colour palettes, toolbox, etc., gets these grabbing handles. And all I need to do is grab, for example, my toolbox, and I can drag this across to a second monitor. So I could end up working with my design on one monitor and all the other elements of the workspace on a second monitor. So this just frees you up and allows you to concentrate on what you're actually working on. Now, if we look at the toolbox, for example, you can see that certain elements have these small black triangles in the corner, which designates that behind this we have a flyout toolbar. And as we go down the list, you can see there are many, many tools included in the toolbox. But do you really need all of these tools? If you tend to perform specific tasks day in, day out, you're probably going to be working with a specific set of tools. And by just disabling the tools that you don't need, you're going to really free up space and declutter your toolbox, and it will be much easier for you to find a tool that you need when you need it. Now, a method that you could previously use to remove items from your toolbar was to just go up to your toolbox, for example, hold down the Alt key and just drag the element off. And you can see we've now lost our contour tool. And if you wanted to put this back on, you'd need to go up to Tools, Customization, Commands, go and search again for your, let's go back into Toolbox, go and search for your contour tool, and then holding down the Alt key, drag this back in. Here we have our contour again. So that's all a little bit fiddly, and luckily in CorelDRAW7 what we have now is much, much easier. At the bottom of the toolbox, on the property bar, and also where the dockers are, we now have these quick customize buttons. And a quick customize button is going to give you an overview of all the tools available for you. And all you need to do here is to go through the list and just activate or deactivate the tools that you don't want to use. So if I think that I'm never going to use Smart Drawing or a 3-point curve, and if I think I'm not going to use 3-point rectangles or ellipses, I can just go down this list, just removing anything I don't wish to use or wish to see in my toolbox. Now, if you take away too many things, or if you've actually dragged stuff off, one just wants to set your toolbar back to the way it was, you've got a Reset Toolbar button. Normally, to reset the whole of CorelDRAW as an application, all you need to do is hold down the F8 key when you start up the application, and you'll be asked if you're sure that you want to overwrite the current workspace with the factory defaults. But in this case, it's quite easy. We don't have to start, restart, or reset the program as such. We can just reset the toolbar. If I click on Customize, this will take us back into the customization commands. Now, the same thing applies to our property bar here. If I click on the Quick Customize button, I'm getting at the moment the properties shown that I see if I have the Pick tool selected. If, for example, I choose the Text tool, and again I click on the Quick Customize button, I'm getting a completely different set of options offered to me here. So these are the commands that are available on the property bar for the text tool. And again, I can just activate and deactivate any elements that I want to see or don't want to see here. And finally, we have the Dockers. If I click on the Quick Customize button here, again, I can choose which Dockers to see or not to see. So by activating and deactivating elements, I can add or detract as many elements from my workspace as I need. And it's very important once you've customized your workspace to actually save this. So if I go up to Window and down to Workspace, first of all, you're going to see the list of workspaces that were available in the welcome screen at the beginning, but I can now export the workspace. If I click on Export, I can choose which elements of my newly configured workspace I actually want to keep. I normally select everything. I keep the toolbars, status bar, shortcut keys, menus, Dockers, and if you've set up any standard settings for your toolbar, you can save those as well. I now have two choices. I can email the workspace to myself, so if I'm working with CorelDRAW, perhaps at work, and I'm working at home on a machine with CorelDRAW, or perhaps in a different building or different department, I can actually mail this workspace to myself so that I don't have to set everything up again from scratch. I can just import the workspace and I've got all the settings ready. I can also save the workspace, and all I need to do is give the workspace a name. So I can call this my custom workspace and just save this. Once the workspace has been saved, you can close this dialog box. So we've saved the workspace, but how do I, if I reset CorelDRAW or start Draw from a default workspace, how do I actually find this customized workspace again? Well, I go back up to Window, down to Workspace, and I choose Import. And now I need to select the workspace file to import. Let's just click on Browse. And this is the workspace that I've just created. So I'm going to click on Open. And now we click on Next. Again, I can choose which elements of my new workspace I wish to incorporate. I'm going to keep everything and click on Next. Now it's really important that I import this as a new workspace. So if I leave it a current workspace, it's going to overwrite anything that I'm currently working with. If I import it as a new workspace, it joins the list of workspaces that I can choose from. So I'm going to call this new workspace. I can give this a name. The best thing to do is to give this a descriptive name. So if you are creating a workspace more for doing graphic design, you can call this graphic design workspace. Or if this is more for doing more artistic work and you have a lot of artistic tools in there, you can call this my artistic workspace. So the name is really up to you, but it's probably better if you keep it quite descriptive. And here you can also give a description of the workspace if you want to. Sometimes it's just a few little simple tweaks that can really, over time, make a difference in how fast you work. One thing I personally like to do is to change the order of some of the commands in the menu. Now, I don't use all of these commands all the time, but those that I do use a lot, such as import, export, publish to PDF, I like to keep these fairly near the top so I don't have to scroll down all the way through these different command menus. Now, to move commands within a menu, go to Tools, Customization, and just simply click on Commands. Once this has been selected, you can go to a menu, choose a command, and just drag this up into a different position. So I'm just going to drag these up here. Now, you're not actually seeing anything happen at the moment, but once I say OK, and I go back to the menu, I now have Publish to PDF, Export and Import at the top of my list, together with Open, Open Recent, Close All, etc. And I do find this personally a great time saver. Now there are also many more tools and commands in CorelDRAW than you are actually going to see in your toolbox or under the menus here. If I go back to Customization and I go to Commands, in the File command we have all of these possible options here. Now if you have a command here that is possibly missing from the list as such, I have a quiet image here, you can always take any of the commands here and by holding down the Alt key you can drag this and just add this as a separate point to your menu here. Again, if I say OK and go back to File, again it's not active at the moment, but I have this command now added to my toolbar. To remove it, hold down the Alt key and drag off. Close the menu, reopen it, and the command is now gone again. Now you can add commands to menus, but you can also add them to other places. So back into customization, back into commands. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and this time I'm going to place it up here on the property bar. And as you can see, if I now click OK, this item will have been added not to a menu but to the property bar. So I hope you're gradually starting to get a feel for just how customizable the CorelDRAW workspace is. You can basically place your commands, add and remove commands, add commands to the toolbox, to property bars, etc. very, very easily, and just save this as a new workspace. Moving on, let's now take a look at command bars, and specifically creating our own command bar. Now you can see that by default not every tool or command bar is visible and active. So we can turn these remaining toolbars on if we wish to, but we can also create a brand new custom toolbar and add our own commands to this. So I'm going to create a new toolbar and call this Import Export. And I'm just going to say OK. And here is my new command bar. Now at the moment we can't really see the title or expand this because I don't actually have any commands on this toolbar. So back into Tools, down to Customization, and now we need to add some commands to this toolbar. And I would like to add Export, Import, Publish to PDF, Save As, and etc, etc. You can add as many commands as you want to. I'm just going to say OK to this. Now I'm just going to resize my new command bar. So because I do a lot of saving, exporting, I can just grab this toolbar and just place this up here in my workspace. Again, when I save my workspace or export it, it's going to save my new toolbars for me. To round off the customization part of our tutorial today, we're going to take a look at working with key shortcuts. Now, many of us are quite visual people. We prefer to use with little coloured icons that we just click on if we need to do something. Some people prefer dropping down a menu, but there's also the third possibility, which is using key shortcuts. And as you can see here, for example, in the File menu, some of the commands have key shortcuts and other commands don't. So how can we create a key shortcut, or better said, assign a key shortcut to a command, or how can we change a key shortcut that's already been assigned? We're going back up to Tools, down to Customization, and we're going to click on Commands. So I've set the drop-down list to show all items, and I'm going to go down to the end of my list here because I want to assign key shortcuts to my zooming options. If I click, for example, on Zoom to Selection and I click on Shortcut Keys, I can see that at the moment there is a key shortcut associated with Zoom to Selection, Shift F2, but I find that quite hard to remember. So I want to assign a new shortcut key, and I'm going to assign Alt S and Assign. If I don't wish to use this one anymore, I can just delete this. Now, to make sure that you're not assigning the same key shortcut to a command that might already use it, you can also tick this box here, Navigates Conflict on Assign, and in that case it will show you the two commands that are associated with that particular shortcut key, and you can decide which one you want to associate it with. So let's just go through and associate a few more. Zoom to Width has no shortcut key assigned to it, so I'm going to go Alt W. Zoom to Height, Alt H, F4 I already know, so I'm just going to leave it like this. Now, if you want to know, or if you want to see a complete list of all commands that already have key shortcuts associated with them, click here on the Shortcut Key tab on View All. And if I can just expand this a little bit. So I'm just going to try and make this readable. So here we have a list of all of the commands that have key shortcuts associated with them. So what's not on this list are the commands that don't have key shortcuts associated with them. And you'll also notice there are two types of shortcut keys. We have the main table and the table for text editing. And what this means is you can actually use Control B, for example, to alter the brightness, contrast and intensity. But as soon as I change to the text tool, if I use the same shortcut key, Control B, because it is the text tool, it's a text editing command, and this is just going to make my text bold. So actually you don't have to be afraid of running out of key shortcuts, because any commands that are associated with the text tool can also be associated again in conjunction with the graphic tools. Now this list is quite useful. You can print this out, you can export it to a spreadsheet, and I find it quite useful just to look at this list, just to give you an overview of which commands actually have key shortcuts. You can also sort them here according to which key shortcut is actually used with a particular command. So this rounds off our section on customizing the workspace. I hope that once you've actually tried this for yourself and you've streamlined your workspace, you've added or removed only the tools that you need, or you've removed the tools that you don't need, you've exported your workspace, perhaps you've got a small selection of tools that you need really frequently and you've added those to your own toolbar, and I'm sure that once you've set up your workspace, as we've seen today, you're going to find working with CorelDRAW much easier and, above all, much faster. CorelDRAW X7 and Corel Photo Paint X7, the new Font Playground Docker introduces a much easier and much faster way to browse, experiment with, and choose the perfect font. Before CorelDRAW X7, if you wanted to try out different fonts to see if they fit with your design, it was necessary to manually select the object, drop down the font list, and try out different fonts. Or you could create multiple copies of a text object, change the font for each one, and then compare them. But either way was very time consuming. But with the Font Playground, we can now compare multiple fonts within seconds. To open the Font Playground, go up to Text and choose Font Playground. And here we can see 3 different sample texts, and to add more than one sample, just click on Add Another Sample. The first thing I'm going to do here is change the text to Youth Program. So I'm just going to select the text and perhaps make this a little bit wider. And now we can start changing the text and see which font we actually want to use. So I'm just going to add a couple of fonts here. And just leave it like this. Now we can also change the size of the font display by just adjusting this slider, or by using the increase or decrease icons on either side of the slider bar. We can also choose to view the sample fonts as single lines of text, multiple lines of text, or a list of cascading sizes. So the font I think that I'm going to use here is the Seagull font. And what I can do is I can just drag this into my document. Let's just remove this one here. Let's just place this in the correct position and just resize it. So let's choose a font for this one. And again, I'm just going to delete this, or I can change the text here. And let's choose a different font for this. Let's choose Seago Normal. So I'm just going to remove this and again drag the font in that I want to use. And it's basically as simple as that. Before we move on from the font playground, there's one other thing that I'd like to show you quickly. Within the font playground, you have access to advanced OpenType features. I have 4 fonts here, they're all OpenType, but if, for example, I click on Seago UI, you can see that apart from the original font, I can also choose from small caps. If I select the Gabriola font and click on the arrow, I have even more stylistic sets to choose from. So working with the font playground not only lets you compare and select fonts quickly, but within the fonts, depending on the font, you can choose different stylistic sets. So let's just choose small caps. So I'm going to remove this text object here, drag this in, just resize it quickly, and change the colour again. And now we're more or less done with the font playground. The font playground allows us to experiment with the various fonts already installed on our system. But what if you are sent a photo of a font by a customer, for example, or you yourself see a font somewhere that you like but which you don't know the name of? This is where What the Font can help you clear up the mystery. Here we have a bitmap image of a font that I would like to use, but I don't know what the font is called or even if I have it on my system. So let's go identify it. Go up to Text and down to What the Font. Make sure that you are zoomed in at a decent level, as if the size is too small, you might get problems when trying to identify it. Drag around the image with the cursor and click inside to capture. If you have an internet connection, you will now be taken to the MyFonts website where a font analysis will take place. Check through to make sure that all the letters have been correctly identified, then continue. And here we can see a list of fonts that are either identical or similar to the image we have just uploaded. If I'm not sure if I have this font or not on my system, all I have to do is to type in the name in Corel Connect to check. And I'm pretty sure that what we have here is DeVein Roman. And here I have opened Corel Connect. CorelDRAW Graphics Suite X7 comes with 1000 OpenType fonts. And as you can see here, I also have the extra content from CorelDRAW X6, also listed here. If I want to include my system font folder in any font searches within Corel Connect, all I have to do is make sure that I check the box for this PC under the folders option, and this will give me a comprehensive search of all available fonts. Let's go ahead and search for DeVein. The green checks here and here show me that I actually have some of the DeVein family installed, but by right-clicking on a font file, I can actually install the whole DeVein family of fonts. And if I later decide that I don't want to use the DeVein family of fonts any longer, I just need to right-click and uninstall the font family. What the Font is designed to work with dark text against a light background. In this instance, we have a white text on a magenta background, and if I were to try to use What the Font here, we would get problems trying to identify the font. But there is a way around this. We are going to create a lens that will invert the colours for us. Using the Quick Customize button, I open the lens docker. And with the rectangle selected, I'm going to convert this into an invert colour lens. Now watch what happens. Magic, and now the colours have been inverted and we can go ahead and use What the Font. And I happen to know that the font I used here was indeed Kaufmann. I have here 4 text samples in English, French, German and Portuguese. But I happen to know that we're missing an accent here, we're missing an umlaut here and another accent here. So the quickest way to access special glyphs or characters is to go up to text and to choose the new Insert Character Docker. Now I'm using the Arial font, so I'll leave the font set to Arial. And what we're seeing at the moment is the entire font. But if I scroll all the way down here, I've got many glyphs, many of which I don't actually need to see. So brand new in this version of CorelDRAW, I can actually choose which parts of the fonts that I want to see. So in this case, I only want to look at the Latin script. I don't need any punctuations, numbers, anything like this. I just want the plain letters. So I'm going to go down now and look for those special fonts. So this is the first letter that we need. And as I click on this font, if I just expand the advanced properties here, I'm going to get some information about what the letter's actually called with an acute accent, the Unicode. If I want to add a keystroke to enter this, I can do this. What I'm going to do is just copy this and go back to my text and just paste this in. And I happen to know it's the same accent here. And what is quite useful is that when you use a specific character quite frequently, it's going to appear up here in the recently used character docker. So we now need to find our German umlaut, and we have this here. So again, I'm going to copy this and just paste this in. Just want the one letter, there we go. And here we have our special characters. So the new Insert Character Docker is very useful for weeding out all the characters you don't need to see, reducing the set of glyphs, and also showing you the most recently used characters. Styles and style sets are groups of attributes that determine the appearance of objects. When you apply a style or style set to an object, all of the attributes or properties defined in that style are applied to the object in one step. That is how you can simultaneously format many different objects and significantly reduce your setup and production time. And what is more, when you edit a style or style set, all the objects defined by that style are automatically updated. You can create and apply styles and style sets to different types of objects. For example, graphic objects, artistic and paragraph text, callout and dimension objects, and any objects created with the artistic media tools. And the advanced style capabilities within CorelDRAW now allow you to format your documents with speed, ease, and consistency. So to create object styles and object style sets, which are basically a collection or a group of styles, I'm going to first click on the Quick Customize button and open up the Object Styles Docker. So here I've done some preliminary formatting of text, and I just want to save the text, the colour, the font, etc. as a style. So I'm just going to select my first text here, click on Styles and say New Style from Selected. And what I want to save here are the properties of this particular character. So let's call this Title Large Green and just say OK. So here I can see I've got my properties here of my text, and I'm just going to go ahead and continue saving this as a style. Small title brown. So I've just expanded the panel here a little so that we can see what's been created. I just went ahead selecting the different objects and saving them as styles. Where I'm just saving a string of text, where I want to keep the properties of the font, so in this case, if I select my large title green, the properties of my text here are my green fill, no outline, font size, etc., etc. But when it comes to the two paragraphs that I have here, I want to save multiple properties. So I want to save not only the font face, the font color, I also want to save the alignment and the spacing of the text. So instead of saving these two paragraphs as a style, I've saved them as a style set. And this way I'm saving multiple properties. So on page 2 of my document, I also save the text here as a style. So how can we go through using these styles to format our documents? Well, I'm just going to make some quick changes here. So the first thing I'm going to do is select my title here, which is just plain Arial, and selecting my title large green style, I'm going to click on Apply to Selected. And I'm just going to go through using the same styles as we have on page 1 to basically reformat the objects on this page. So let's go for paragraph 1, Apply to Selected. Paragraph 2, Apply to Selected. And now let's just choose these objects here. So I've now basically formatted my text on page 2, similar to the objects on page 1. Now let's quickly go into Page Sorter View. Page Sorter View is going to give us an overview of all the pages in my current document. And here you can see the pages where I've formatted the objects here using specific styles. Now just imagine at the moment this is a 2-page document, but it could also be a 100-page catalogue or a 50-page document. And the beauty of styles or working with styles is that if, for example, I make a decision that I don't really want to use this green as my title colour, I can choose the style, and as soon as I change the properties of this style, let's just change this to red, any object, as you see here, using this particular style is automatically updated, and that holds true whether this is a 1-page document, 2-page document or 100-page document. So let's grab our title small brown and let's change that to blue. And again you can see here that everything's been automatically updated in the document. So if you do have quite complex multi-page documents, working with object styles is really to be recommended, as any changes you need to make throughout a document can be made in seconds. Now what you might also want to do is, once you've taken the trouble to create styles for a particular document, is to export these as a style sheet. So over here we can choose Export Style Sheet. I'm just going to save this in this document here. And you can give this a name and just save this, just export this. And what this means is the next time you need to use exactly those styles for a similar document, perhaps for the same customers, all you need to do is to import your style sheet, and you'll have all the styles waiting for you here to be applied to your various objects. So we've seen how we can use object styles for formatting text, for example, in a document. But you can also create colour styles from the colours of an existing object or from scratch. And when you create a colour style, the new colour style is saved to the active document and to the colour styles palette. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up the colour styles Docker. And let's talk a little bit more about colour styles. After you create a colour style, you can apply it to objects in the document. And CorelDRAW lets you access all the available colour styles through various controls. So we have here the Colour Styles Docker, but we can also access colour styles through the Object Styles Docker, the Object Properties Docker and the Colour Styles palette, and also the Document palette. And a colour style is automatically added here to your Document palette when you apply it to an object. Now a colour style is a single colour that you can apply to an object, but colour styles can also be combined into groups called colour harmonies. And a colour harmony allows you to link colour styles into hue-based relationships and modify them together as a set. And by editing colour styles in a Harmony, you can quickly create a variety of alternative colour schemes by shifting all the colours in the colour Harmony together. Or you can alter the colour composition of your artwork in one step. So let's get started here with creating some colour styles and colour harmonies. I have two identical graphics here, and although this graphic works quite well on a white background, over here there's not enough contrast between the graphic and the blue background. So the first thing I'd like to do is change the colour scheme or the colour relationships within this graphic so that it works better on a blue background. So I select my graphic and I drag it over to the lower panel of the Colour Styles docker. And the first thing that I'm offered is to create three colour harmony groups: a grayscale, a brown and a blue. So I'm also choosing both fill and outline, but you can choose to create colour harmonies and colour styles from only the fill or only the outline. But in this case I want to create two groups and just play around with these groups and see how they work. So let's just expand this a little bit here. So here are my two colour harmony groups. If I select this group, you can see the brown and the blue represented here, and these colours have a particular relationship to each other. And I'm just going to move these through the colour wheel, and as you can see, the colours are changing in real time on the screen, and at the same time they are retaining their relationship to each other. If I just reverse those steps so that we go back to our original colours, I could also, perhaps instead of changing the colour, just change the saturation of the colours, making them a little bit brighter on the background, or making them darker. So you have various options here. Let's create a new colour harmony with this object here. But in this case I just want one colour harmony group. Now we saw before that we can just go through the colour wheel changing the colours, but we can also apply colour theory rules. So for example, I could use complementary colours, and you'll see that the colour that was selected first becomes a complementary colour to the other colours in the colour harmony. Let's just select this colour again. Now let's choose monochromatic, and now everything's been reduced down to very simplified but very harmonious colours, or analogous accented. So again, by applying these colour theory rules, you can get some fantastic colour combinations working within your design. And again, we can change the colours in real time on the screen, but again, the relationship of the colours to each other is still analogous accented. Let's now create some colour styles and apply these styles to objects. So I'm just going to drag some colours now up to the upper panel here. I'm just going to choose a few colours that I think are going to work well together. And now I'm going to apply these colours to objects. So we're applying the colour styles here. Perhaps zoom in a little bit here. So I've now applied these colour styles to this object, and I'm just going to go ahead now and apply the same colour styles to the object below. Now what happens when we change any of the properties of the colour here that's been applied to an object? Well, as we saw earlier, when we change the properties of a specific object style, every single object that had had that style applied to it was automatically updated. And the same thing happens with colour styles. Let me just go into the colour editor and choose this first colour here. By updating the colour style, every object that uses that style is automatically updated throughout the document. Let's just take another colour here. And again, these objects have been instantaneously updated. And again, this is an enormous time saver. If you're working on multi-page documents or complex documents, instead of just picking colours from a colour palette, which have no styles associated with them, By actually working with styles, if you need to change one particular colour throughout a document, all you need to do is change the style, and these changes are automatically applied throughout the document. So let's continue on with our time-saving tips and tricks for working with colour. Now, if you are creating flyers, brochures, marketing materials, you'll be working with images most probably, and it would be nice to have the graphical elements within your document matching nicely with the colours in your image. So for this purpose, we're going to create a new palette from the colours in this image. And not only that, once we've created a palette, we can add those colours here as colour styles and use those to create nice harmonious graphical elements within our design. And the advantage is again that if we use colours from the new colour palette as colour styles, it's going to be really simple to change any of these in a multi-page document if we need to. So let's select our bitmap, and we've got two choices here. We can go down to our document palette, and the document palette collects colours from your document as you add them to objects. So I've selected my image. I'm going to click here and say Add from Selection. And it's going to ask me how many colours from this image do I want to add to the colour palette. And at the moment, I'm just going to stick with 10 colours. And here are those colours here. But we have another couple of options here. We've already added the colours from the image to our document palette, but if we want to create a brand new palette with just these colours, we can go up to Window, Colour Palettes, and choose Create Palette from Selection. And let's give this a name. Let's call this Italian Balcony. And now again we're asked how many colours we want. Let's choose in this case 25 colours. Now we can't actually see the palette at the moment. We need to go back up here, back down to our Colour Palette Manager, and under My Palettes I've now got my Italian Balcony palette. So I've created a brand new palette from the colours in this image. But we have yet another option. I'm just going to close the Colour Palette Manager again. By right-clicking on the image and going down to Colour Styles, I can create colour styles directly from the image by clicking on New from Selected. And here again, it's a bit like the Colour Harmony window. I'm being asked to create groups of colours that work well together. So in this case, I'm not going to create any colour styles or colour harmonies. I'm just going to stick with the palette because I want to use single colours. Now all I need to do to create colour styles is just drag a colour from this palette over to the Colour Styles window. And again, I can apply these colour styles directly to objects throughout my document. And because these colours are derived directly from the image, all of the colours are going to work really well in any design that I'm creating. This concludes our webinar today, and we hope very much that you enjoyed it and that you found a lot of the tips and tricks that I've shown you today useful. Do join us next month for another CorelDRAW webinar, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you then.